after, almost immediately following the injunction hearing, that seeing a permanent injunction enforced over at Landback Lane, as well as the permanent injunction being put on every road in Haldimand County, which is all of Six Nations territory. OPP rolled up, shooting rubber bullets. I pulled some taser darts out of my brother's back. This is the violence that we've been talking about with the OPP coming down here. And so now, as a result of this, the Highway 6 again has been blocked. The train tracks bordering our community have been blocked. Argyle Street has been blocked. This is what happens when you come to a community such as ours and try and enforce these injunctions put on Indigenous lands by racist judges. And so when the OPP come in, guns a-blazing, letting rubber bullets fly past the ears of women sitting around the fire, this is an absolutely ridiculous concept. Anybody that is watching any of this unfold, I think people all across Turtle Island are starting to stand up and understand that we can't tolerate this anymore, and we won't. Our people are standing up across the nation. And so as long as we stick together and stay together and we amplify each other's voices, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. So we're calling on our allies across all of Turtle Island to stand up and help amplify our voices. And come on down and support Landback Lane and Six Nations community as a whole as we make our voices heard in this situation right now.
Sago, this is John Kane, and this is Let's Talk Native. This is a special Friday night broadcast of Let's Talk Native with our coverage of the OPP raids on 1492 Landback Lane and Six Nations. My guest is Skyler Williams. Skyler joined us a couple of months ago when there was a lot of activity associated with resisting some of this development on disputed lands, and things kind of heated up again. So I've invited Skyler back. I have to caution listeners. There are things happening moment by moment. So we're going to try to do a pretty in-depth interview here. But Tyler assured me he couldn't promise me that Skyler warned me that he could be pulled off the line here because of some of the things that are going on. So Skyler, thank you so much for joining me, taking some time out. I know things have got to be really kind of hectic where you are. So thanks for giving me some time here.
Yeah, absolutely. And do what I can anyways.
Well, and again, it's always difficult because nobody wants to be the focal point of a conflict. And as much as you are involved in this thing, these things can't happen without a lot of participation. And I know you've got a lot of people in the community that are there. And while you have offered yourself up to this interview, I don't want to give you any kind of a dangerous level of credit or blame here. So, but you are involved, and so I figure you're a good person to talk to.
Like the role that I've played in this has been only as a spokesperson here. Like I take no leadership role in any of it. It's just a great community of people that have really pulled together to make this all happen. And so I've just gotten pushed into the role as the spokesperson to be able to carry the message that I think everybody that has been around here for the last 97 days today has been saying.
Well, let's give a little bit of a rundown on, look, there were some legal proceedings, kind of give a little bit of the breakdown on what's transpired over the last few days.
Yeah, so we fought the injunction. There was a court injunction placed on the people at Landback Lane. August 5th, the cops raided. We managed at that time to push them back and get back on the land. It's the land there at Landback Lane is like right at the doorstep of our community. It's like the neighboring property to Six Nations. Six Nations is a big reserve, for us, anyways, it was about just that kind of further encroachment on our traditional lands, and so we, as a community, had said no on several occasions to development going on, and so my family and some friends of mine got together, and we said, that, and their families all got together and said, you know what, we're gonna put a stop to this, and so we went in July 19th, and have been there since. It's been 97 days today.
Well, and to be clear, this land, you say it's on the doorstep of your community, but it's a part of that land that is disputed as to whether how title of that land could have been stripped away from the community. So, as far as they're concerned, it may be outside, but as far as you're concerned, it should be land that is a part of the community that you live in.
Absolutely, it has, and that's the thing is, when we say our traditional territory, I mean, I don't mean this is 1,000 years ago. I mean this is as in my grandmother's time. Like, this was part of our community, and so for those lands to be stripped away from our community and made part of the neighboring Haldimand County is absolutely ridiculous for all of us. And so we've been saying that, like, we need to have the ability for our community to be able to grow and do all the things that every other community across the country, in the U.S. is no different. If a community wants to be able to grow and thrive as a community, as a town or whatever, they need to be able to grow, and as our population grows, our community's got nothing but smaller. And so for us to say no, meant that the OPP came in to enforce this injunction that the developer had gotten just several days before they raided the camp on August 5th. So they applied to the court to get this injunction. They were granted it without having any argument from our side at all. And then the OPP came in with about 100 OPP officers. I think there was 12 of us there that day. They ended up arresting 9 of us, dragging women away, shooting rubber bullets at people. And mind you, when I say rubber bullets, they don't yell out first, hey, these are rubber bullets. These things come out of a 12-gauge shotgun, and they're letting those fly right directly at you. And so at the time, and for a couple of days afterwards, we had no idea that they were rubber bullets, and so we thought they were firing live rounds at us. And so then a couple people got tasered, and one kid got his face dragged along the pavement. I call him a kid. He's not a kid. He's 20 something, and so myself and 8 other people were arrested that day. When I got out of lockup, the highways and roads and railways were all shut down. And,
let me back. I want to back up just for one thing because I don't want too much time to go before I address rubber bullets. For people who don't know what we're talking about here, these are designed to be less than lethal rounds only if they are shot at the body of a person. If you shoot somebody in the face with these things, and when you talk about these rubber bullets flying by people, oftentimes these things are whizzing by people's face and head. These can be lethal, and we've seen this on the U.S. side. We've seen it, throughout Canada now. They're using these so-called less than lethal weapons in a way that is outside the way the manufacturer even designs these for. So when they're using these tear gas canisters or these concussion grenades, or even some of these, a lot of the pepper spray and what people are calling tear gas, they're using some of these things in inappropriate ways that makes them more lethal, and they certainly make them, a higher grade of a use of force than even the way they're intended.
Absolutely, and I mean, on that day, like those rubber bullets were whizzing by our ears.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, no, they were definitely, there's several rounds shot that day, and a couple of them, narrowly missing myself and the brother standing next to me. And so when we managed to retake the land there, we and have been there since then, our community came out in a huge way to say that, like this was not going to be tolerated. And so the OPP backed off, and as they de-escalated, so did we, and we allowed them their road back and their rail line back and the highway, and so we managed to let that happen. And then and then weeks and months went by, and things started to kind of calm back down, and then people started getting arrested, going home, going to work, doing all of the things that people do.
So they're kind of picking people off, not necessarily at a specific site, but trying to identify people and picking people off. Okay, yep.
And so, like, they were just getting pictures of people at the camp or wherever, and driving in or out and getting license plate numbers, that kind of thing. And eventually they would get arrested. And, and then so that kind of went on for a bit. We started to fight the injunction. The judge in this case came over the top of our defense and said that he wasn't going to allow me to defend myself in their courtroom because I was still on the land and I was violating the injunction that he had put on us. And so when we said, well, we're not going anywhere, but we are willing to come to the court to argue our case, and for whatever reason, the judge decided that wasn't good enough, that I needed to go home.
So essentially, they treated it as if you guys were not contesting the injunction because they refused to let you guys even offer any evidence.
Well, and that's just it, right? Is every time we would, because we did file all of our material with the court, and then as we started to do that, the judge then decided that if I wasn't going to follow his orders to leave the land there and let development go on, because it wasn't. Because here's the thing: is if he would have decided and said that development is going to stop if you guys go home and the development stops and everything, then you know what? I'd said, all right, no problem. If development's going to stop, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And I got no problem with that. But me going home, it was also meant that development was going to start to happen again. And so we said no, that's not going to be the case. And the judge would not listen to anything that we had to say after that point, and so chose to rule on the case and said that there was going to be a permanent injunction that would permanently extinguish our claim over the land forever.
So, and this is what came a couple of days ago.
That's right.
Okay, and so at this point, you guys are still in on one site, or do you have two spots that you guys were still somewhat assembled?
We've since the last raid, 6 and 6, which is just like at the back door of our camp. We have a trail that goes from one camp to the other, but that borders our reserve. And so our people would be able to come in and render aid should OPP raid us again.
So this permanent injunction, which essentially, again, permanently enjoins you. It basically is telling you that you permanently cannot step foot on this disputed land. And that came a couple of days ago, and then this raid happened almost immediately after that.
Well, that's the thing is when we we came back to camp after court, and as we came back at that back door, that 6 and 6 right next to their camp, there was 2 OPT SUVs sitting there with 8 cops sitting in them, and a couple of people approached them and said, "Hey, like, you guys shouldn't be here. Like, you are spiking things up here for no reason." And they said that, "Well, we're here to arrest somebody, and from our camp." And so the person that approached them left, and then another person went, and another person went, and after I think it was 3 or 4 people had went up and asked them quite nicely, like, like, you guys need to leave. Like, you guys are going to spike things up here for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and we don't want to see that happen. And so when somebody had told them, like, there's no reason for you to be doing this, and no reason for you to be here, and we told them, like there's somebody's going to take offense to you being here. And then as I got there, the cops were already out of the cars and had these big 12 gauge shotguns pointed at our people, and it started to fire on unarmed people that were just trying to tell them to get on out of here.
Now, give me a sense for when they started firing. How far away from the people they were shooting at? How far away were they?
15, 20 feet.
Okay.
Not very far at all.
And now
one young guy got shot in the back of the leg.
Oh yeah.
Another guy got tasered. He came up to me after, and I had to pull the darts out of his back from the wires. And so it was.
Now, when they did that, did they arrest people as well? Did they try to arrest people?
They were trying to, yes.
Now, they suggested to the first people who approached them that they were there to arrest people. Now, was there any indication that they had warrants for arrest, or were they going there essentially to incite a situation where they could arrest a person for the behavior that they were a part of inciting?
They did not specify who they were there to see.
Okay. And so right now, you guys still have not been notified that they have an arrest warrant for anybody?
Yeah. No, there's one for myself, and I think there's like 18 more that are outstanding.
Okay. So they fired upon some people, and then what was your response?
When I got there, the everything was happening, and so we approached the cops again, even again unarmed, and told them that we, with some raised voices, and told them that they need to leave. And then as we started yelling at the cops, telling them that it's time to go, then more and more of our people from the reserve started to show up, and I think people were quite upset. And then some roads the road that right there got blocked. And then as the night progressed, the OPP continuing to puff their chest started coming up closer again, and the rail lines got blocked that border our reserve, and the highway that borders our reserve also got blocked. And so since then, there's some big holes in the middle of roads.
So the pavement's been busted up to do a little bit more than just
the pavement is up.
So they're not just blocked by people and by vehicles at this point. Did I see, like, is there like sand or dirt that's been dumped on a few places as well?
No, that's just the dirt from the hole.
Okay. All right, I see. I've seen some of the
There's a bunch.
videos and some of the images. So basically now the roads have been tore up, and that's part of blocking the roads. At some point, did you literally chase the? I mean, I got the impression that the cops were almost chased out of there.
They were walked out of here. Absolutely, they were. And several more times to push them back further than, because every time they keep on encroaching closer and closer every time. And so as they want to push the envelope to see, in this particular situation where the cops approached, there was a drone flying overhead, and they were able to gain some aerial shots. Like, they knew what they were doing and inflaming the situation, and so this was just them trying to spark a situation that would see the further criminalization of the people that have made this stand here.
No, and I think people have to know that. Look, our community. So, and I include Six Nations, Oswego, Akwesasne, Ganawage, Ganazadage, all of our territories, and it's not just Mohawk territories, but many of our territories, and I want to say this carefully because I don't want to make it I don't want to inflame the situation, but we hunt. We have guns, and we're somewhat hesitant to bring them out just to put them on display. And I know that the RCMP, the OPP, the SQ in Quebec, I know that they have always been leery of just how much resistance we will put up. And so anytime that we've had a skirmish of some sort with these guys, I think they've always had some apprehension about not just the fact that, look, we have weapons in our homes, but we also have some people that have military training. I mean, going back to the earlier conflicts in 1990 and even before that, there were many of our guys who had Vietnam experience and experience in fairly recent military experience. So I know this always catches them, and leaves them a little on edge. And I haven't seen anything that showed our people brandishing weapons against them, but it's got to be in their minds all the time that they never know. And this idea of pulling the trigger, even on rubber bullets, like you said, these are shotguns. So when they start touching off live rounds, regardless, of how they want to characterize these rounds, it really must put things right to the edge of our own people, being willing to shoot back.
You know what? And that's been at the back of my mind since the beginning of this. And so it's certainly an awful thought and I would hope that the OPP would understand that, like, continuing with these, the tactics that they've been using are don't lead to anywhere good.
Well, and again, it's not to say that you as a group or Native people as a group are threatening to kill anybody, but all it takes is somebody to get agitated with the activity of the police to the point where they say, no, I'm not going to take it anymore. And so we could have that individual who ends up pulling out a weapon just because these guys are inflaming the situation. And it's not an organized plan to attack the police, but man, they better be careful what they wish for.
And you know what? I've done every bit possible to make sure that that doesn't come to that in this particular situation. We've maintained our peaceful presence on our camp for as long as we have, and I'm working very hard every day to make sure that we maintain that peaceful presence on our territory.
Well, and I one of the things that the phrase that gets thrown out there is when they talk about asymmetric warfare. One of the things that came out back when the I Don't Know More movement was really starting to rise up. they have these things that called their Macdonald-Laurier reports, and they had a guy who was a writer, and actually wrote a novel about Native uprising, and his name was Douglas Bland, and he wrote this Macdonald-Laurier report where he had used an Ivy League developed computer model to determine the likelihood of an insurgency, and he plugged in all of Canada's data into that, and it talked about everything from their weak infrastructure, how exposed it is, how unprotected it is, and the conditions that Canada has been imposing upon Native people. And the determination was that Canada was creating a situation where they were stirring the pot to the point that there was a fairly good likelihood that, and this wasn't our territories necessarily. This talked about Native people from out west to from BC to Newfoundland, and this report had suggested that the only thing that lacked a major insurgency was a little bit of the disorganization from territory to territory. But every time they do this thing, they actually get more and more of our people working together and standing in solidarity, like the guys in Tyendinaga supporting the folks in Wet'suwet'en territory back in February. And of course now this white supremacist action going against the Mi'kmaq up in Nova Scotia is heightening everybody's sense of solidarity. It just seems like Canada just keeps pushing this trigger farther and farther along.
And I think this is exactly what we've been saying. And I know for me, especially, like, I know here in Six Nations, when Wet'suwet'en and my brothers in Tyendinaga were raided, we blocked the highway again, that borders our reserve, in support of that. We maintained that barricade for several weeks, and so it's something that, when we amplify each other's voices the way that we've done in the last several years now, where we've worked together to make sure that every single time that Indigenous communities stand together and make these stands. As long as we're able to do that together, the power that we have as united communities is undeniable. And it's something that that there's no government, there's no police force, there's no anything, and certainly not a Haldimand County court can extinguish any of our rights when we are willing to go to bat for those rights with our bodies, with our lives, and for most of us, our freedoms.
Well, and here's the thing also is right now, because so many of our territories, including on the southern border, if you think about the pushback that the Oldham are putting against Trump's wall, and again, so it's happening in so many places that one of the things that has got to be should be a real concern on both the U.S. and the Canadian side is that we don't need to send 10,000 people to any given spot. I mean, when the Dakota Access Pipeline issue was going on, a lot of people converged there, and that strategy wasn't the strategy that we have employed in certainly in Haudenosaunee territory. We've always said, no, you don't need to come here. You need to do something at home. You need to block a highway. You need to block a railway. You need to demonstrate where you live. Your solidarity for what's happening, and this makes the pain go a lot farther than trying to get a bunch of people to show up, like with the Mi'kmaq. Look, I think it'd be great for people to go up there and defend against these white mobs of white supremacists. But at the end of the day, the more effective strategy is when we do these actions in solidarity with each other right where we live, because that makes it even harder for Canada and the United States to defend themselves.
And I think we are echoing the very same sentiments. And if we're going to take these words from a judge like the one in our particular case, which we are appealing, by the way, but are trying to push that argument forward that we as Ungwahome people across Turtle Island, it is the the mass of people that we have. You know, like taking, like our communities have been divided up and put on these little postage stamps scattered across all of North America, and then they thought they could take advantage of this by running, rail lines and
Pipelines,
highways,
power lines, all that stuff. Yeah.
all the power lines, everything goes through Native communities. And that's no different here in Six Nations. As I'm sitting here now at the camp, there is 4 of these massive 500-volt transmission lines, 5 lines of them running. So when the governments and politicians thought that they could take advantage of Native communities in such a way, it pains me to know, look what they've done to themselves.
Well, and that's what that's what was all laid out. That was all laid out in that McDonald-Laurier report back then, because they acknowledged that their infrastructure was not only somewhat weak and fragile, but it was unprotected, and so they've got their own studies that suggest that. And I think the thing that people have to understand is that when we talk about shutting down a rail system, basically Canada's rail system got shut down in February. I mean, this was before COVID shut anything down. That this was happening because multiple territories, not just Tyendinaga, but multiple territories had done this, and so. I mean, just rail alone, and you mentioned power lines, but there's communication lines. There's all kinds of infrastructure that, look, people can call it anything they want to call it, but this is nonviolent direct action. These are the actions that we need to take because we don't want to get into a gunfight with these guys. We don't want to see loss of life. We can actually make our stand without one drop of blood or without one hair on anybody's head being hurt, because they, again, foolishly tried to scatter us to where we seemed insignificant, but in the very place that they scattered us is where they want to put some of their development, not just pipelines and rail lines, but even back in Gunnazadage, they are under the threat of trying to put in these condos in the very spots that the whole Oka Gunnazadage crisis was fought over back in 1990. It's like they don't learn a damn thing.
Absolutely, I agree. 100%.
Tell me this, Skyler. Do you have any fundraising link or campaign that you could that you could rattle off now or get to me later so we can post it up on as we broadcast all this? I think it's really important because you guys are obviously incurring some expense not only to your community but even for your legal aid. Is there something that you guys have in place?
Yeah, so we have 2 funds going. Actually, we've got one for kind of the camp and food and building fund, because we are planning on spending the winter there, and so making sure we have insulated buildings that are going to manage to be able to withstand all of that. And so yeah, we got that going, and that's Landback, the number 6 nations at gmail.com for e-transfers, and PayPal is linked to that as well. But then there's also the GoFundMe for the legal defense.
Okay.
And so right now we're hoping to be able to raise $500,000.
Now, do you have a name for the GoFundMe campaign?
1492 Landback Lane.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, not only are people going to hear this, but we'll try to post the links as we put the video up and that kind of thing. So, and we'll do what we can to look. I know it's tough because I'm included in that group of people that sit here thinking, what the hell can I do to help? And obviously, we need to concentrate on what we can do in our own communities to support each other. Sometimes this idea of, again, thousands of people showing up someplace, yeah, it makes a good visual, but then you've got to figure out how you feed everybody. Then you got to figure out how you house everybody. So sometimes the knee jerk reaction to just jump in the car. In the old days, my generation, that's what we did because we just jumped in a car and went. And but there we're talking about hundreds, not thousands. Nowadays, with social media and everything else, we need to make sure that we organize how we how we demonstrate our solidarity. So I think these GoFundMe accounts, the PayPal, we'll put all those links up, and look, we'll do our part. And here's the thing I also want to tell you. You can feel free to reach out to me anytime. I know this is, we had you on a couple of months ago. I've been following this stuff. Obviously, I joined the group pages, and I bring this thing up. I got to tell you, I got to do a debate with somebody because there was somebody who was of I think they were from the Caribbean or something, but they thought it was inappropriate that you use 1492 without mentioning the Taino and the Arawak specifically. And I tried to tell them, look, when we reference 1492, we are including what our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean experienced at the hands of Christopher Columbus and every year since then. But sometimes we have to go through in such great detail to explain what our intents are, I guess, what our intentions are.
And I think this is something that is something you'll hear me harp on all the time. Is there's lots and lots of stuff to be offended about, and there's lots of stuff to be angry about. And you know what? I got no blame for people in my community or any other community that's, this is what, 500 years of hurt and oppression and racism and residential school and over-incarceration and over-policing or under-policing, missing and murdered Indigenous women. This is what all of that hurt over the last 500 years looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a hard time blaming somebody for, being hurt and not being heard and not having whatever their experience is. And so I try my very best to have as thick a skin as I can have to be able to do this work. Because and I tell you, you absolutely cannot do this stuff without having that thick skin and broad shoulders to be able to bear the brunt of all of the hurt from our own communities.
Well, and you also can't do this without offending a few people, because at the end of the day, these are hard these are hard conversations. And look, we know that when we take a stand on something, that there is going to be pushback, and sometimes even within our own communities. And it usually, when you look back at something years later, it all sounds like it was great. Everybody was on one page. But when you're living it, man, you got sometimes people in your own family who are saying, you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. And if you drop a few F-bombs here and there, people will talk about how inappropriate you are. But look, you cannot do the work that you do or the work that I do. Look, I talk about a lot of issues, and some of them are land and some of them are culture. Some of them, I know that you can't do this work without offending a few people. And so the message has to be just what your message is. Look, you got to have thick skin. You have to understand that this level of genocide and historical trauma that we all carry with us today, that hurt, as you explained it, is something that we have to confront it all the time. And we confront it because we have to acknowledge that we have white people that live all around us. We have their churches, and we have their schools, and we have their industries and their commercial streams. And of course, all this stuff is something that we have to reconcile as individuals as we try to carve out our own distinction and our own autonomy with a world that has changed all around us.
Absolutely. And this is what we strive to do every day, to be able to, maintain the present, because like I said, it's been, 97 days is a long time to, have a lot of time to think about all of those hurts and all of that pain and all of those things. When the cops are at the doorstep, like they were yesterday, it's easy to forget about all that hurt and all of that pain and those, disagreements that we've had in our communities. It's easy to forget when the guns are being pointed at you, but after 100 days, you get time to think about all of those, the last, however long, long a time it is to start to dwell on some of those old hurts again.
And get angry all over again. I mean, you start reliving the Oka crisis, and you know what those folks in Gunasadage experienced, what those folks in Gunawaga experienced. The idea that the RCMP and the military came right into our longhouses. I mean, I realize that many of the people who are with you today were just children in 1990, and so but once they start hearing the stories, and I've been doing a series of interviews with some people for a project that I'm working on, and just listening to it all over again, man, it gets your blood flowing. And then to know that not only did that happen in 1990, but it's happening today still.
It is, and I think like and I got no blame for anybody in our community that has hard feelings or whatever against anybody. Because you know what, the governments and the OPP, the RCMP before that, the British before that, like have looked for every crap possible to drive wedges in our community. And so for us to whatever bit that we can to say no to development, to say no to further divisions being created by the OPP in our case here, anyways, to say that we're not like this OPP violence is not going to be tolerated on Six Nations territory. And I don't care what group or family or faction you come from, we're going to stand by each other and we're going to hold each other up. And we're going to lift each other's voices in the best way that we know how to.
Well, and I know it's tough because there still are battles that happen in the courts, and the courts are not places that that we ever really find justice. Even when a ruling goes our way, it usually has something else that goes along with it that can be like their own Trojan horse that they leave on our doorstep. So it's tough, and I'm not begrudging the fact that you guys are still fighting a legal fight here, but understanding that there's a big difference between justice and equity. And when you consider that they create the laws and they can do the injunctions and they dictate to the police, whether it's the OPP or the RCMP or in going back to Oka when they actually unleashed the military, they know that we are going to that we are going to resist. I mean, it's kind of it is in our DNA, and the fact is that their court systems have a difficult time accommodating us. And it's the same thing on the U.S. side. Because here's the thing. If they have to recognize us as sovereigns, and which is something we always talk about, if they have to do that, then they have to acknowledge that their courts are not, and their courts are only for people they have jurisdiction over. And in as much as we get dragged into these things, we keep maintaining that you guys are asserting an unlawful authority. And that's, so even as we play this game, we know that we're not going to find justice in that system. And, I had a caller on my show in New York the one day ask me, well, what about this crossing the line into vengeance and revenge and away from justice? And I'm thinking, look, sometimes this idea of payback or equity doesn't conform to, I'm not saying it's revenge or vengeance, but it certainly doesn't conform to the powers that be in their idea of justice. And so this is the real challenge. And I think when you have an entire community that's standing behind you and all these other Native communities standing behind you, I'm glad you guys are holding your ground. But regardless of what happens on a specific patch of land, every bit of resistance that we demonstrate, it further encourages more resistance. And I always talk about the legacy after Oka and Gunasadage, and the fact that you represent a younger generation than me, and that there's kids. You're calling a 20-year-old a kid. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing the next generations, those guys that we're handing the torch off to on a daily basis, that are saying, "No, hell no. I'm." In fact, I don't expect them to do what we did. I expect the next generation to do more than we did. And that's why we have hope for the future.
And this is it. And I mean, I raised my kids the very same way. And we're not going to, let, my kids have, grew up, hearing the stories and knowing what what this looks like, what this feels like. And my wife and I have done this work for most of our lives, and are going to continue this. There's nothing that the courts or the cops or anybody is going to dissuade us from understanding and feeling and knowing what our rights are, and that connection that we as Haudenosaunee people have certainly have to our lands. Like, our lands are part of who we are. And so if we are going to make that stand, whatever that stand may be, it needs to be respected by whether that be Canada or Ontario, and certainly by this joke of a Mayor Ken Hewitt, who's the mayor of Haldimand County, who's been inflaming the situation by calling us terrorists and encouraging the OPP to target my family, and so yeah, it's been quite the time for certainly my kids to feel what this is like, and for them to be kind of called out and have the OPP encouraged to target them is how they've taken the mayor's comments. And so to have my daughter come and ask me, like, am I gonna get arrested, Dad, because they want you so bad? Like this is a horrible thing for a 14-year-old daughter to come and ask her dad.
Well, and unfortunately, this is the kind of the way that they work. Look, when I was going through much of my early days and my battles with not just court but prison and all of it, I remember a probation officer who was threatening to lock me back up one day. He said, and I told him, I said, you can lock me back up. I can do that time standing on my head. And he says, yeah, but what about your family? So he knew, even as he was threatening me, that it was actually a threat against the welfare of my family. And he was so arrogant that he would actually bring that up. I mean, it's one thing for us to think it and to know it, but to have these white men literally say, yeah, you might be tough, but I know how to hurt your family, and that's just it. And look, it is a tough conversation to have with your daughter. I mean, or your child. But this is where the preparation comes in, and it sounds like you're doing an excellent job in your community, but also with your family. And the biggest thing that our kids need to know is that we are defending them. That part of what we're doing every day is about the defense of the future, and we aren't going to look to the future and ignore the our kids right in front of us at the same time. That's just not the way we're built. So, I think your kids and the kids of that community who do feel like their parents are in jeopardy have to know that that as a community we're going to defend them, even if they get dragged into the dispute beyond their years, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think certainly for my kids, they're all well aware of what it is. And there's always that conversation with my daughters before I come and do any of this kind of work, is that there's like the OPP have been known to target people and to kill people that are doing this kind of stuff. And my youngest daughter, she'll cry and give me a big hug, and she'll say that she's proud of me and encourage me to keep on going. And the rest of them will give me big hugs, and it's certainly a sad conversation, but at the same time they understand the resolve that people like me have when we're able to make that stand together. It doesn't matter what anybody threatens us with, our freedoms or our safety. Like, we know that when we stand together, that we are unstoppable.
Well, and the beauty is being able to defend your lands while at home. I mean, and, I always have to remind people that we get to go home. I mean, when we're defending a front line, we can still have a hot meal and go home. Now, we may not go home every single night, but and this is the thing that you almost have to emphasize with the police that are there. is how miserable their lives are and how their government is using them. And I don't feel guilty at all when I'm calling down the cops for what they have allowed themselves, how they've allowed themselves to be used. Look, we're not going to a foreign land to defend an ideal. We're defending our homes at home. And that gives us a tremendous advantage. Not only do we know the lay of the land better than they do, but like I said, we get the constant reassurance and the and the support from our loved ones. I don't know that those cops can make that same claim, and certainly these politicians. It's a real irony that somebody at the level of a mayor can continue to do this thing. I think about the mayor of Oka, and now you got the mayor of this and how do these people ever get entrusted with enough power to cause this level of disruption? It's incredible.
No, and I mean, like, this is exactly it, right? And I think it speaks very loudly to the systemic problem that we're dealing with. It's quite easy when racism and all of that is kind of spoken about behind closed doors. But when that racism is right in your face at the point of a gun, I think it speaks very loudly to the fact that racism and that prejudice is alive and well across Turtle Island.
Well, and here's the thing: in order for somebody to be in a position where they're willing to pull the trigger, whether it's a shotgun with rubber bullets or whatever, even a taser, do you realize that how much they've had to dehumanize us to get to that point? I mean, because look, we're not pointing a gun at them; they're doing this stuff to treat us like animals. So when we talk about racism, just the idea that a police officer or somebody representing that government is justified in doing in this level of violence. And again, I mentioned to you on the phone earlier, it was in the news just the other day about this judge who cleared a police officer of all charges after he beat a black man to death with those gloves that have the reinforced knuckles with weights and plates in it. He beat this person to death by punching him in the head and in the face. And the judge cleared him. This wasn't a jury. This was not a trial. This was a judge who literally can make these unilateral decisions in spite of the fact that racism is such a prevalent part of again, the systemic racism is such a big part of not just the police force, but the judicial system and the prison system. I mean, shame on Canada. I mean, especially here, they've got one major conflict that is making all the news up in Nova Scotia. They've got this ongoing conflict that is happening with you at 1492 Landback Lane, and you still got the folks in Tyendinaga who are constantly demonstrating support. The folks in Kahnawake demonstrating support. You got the Wet'suwet'en conflict still going on, and Canada just. It's almost like, when I think about these cops, even on the U.S. side, with all of the heightened awareness about this use of force, the cops just keep doing it. They just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's embedded in the way that they view an enemy.
And I think that's exactly it. And when we've been degraded to the fact that, to the point where, this, kind of animalistic kind of thought of who we are as people, I think that's exactly what it is. And you know what? The thought that came to me this morning as I saw the sun come up over the barricade across the road was, I wonder what Justice Harper is thinking as he woke up this morning. And I wonder if this is what he thought was going to happen when he made a decision that would see land claims, 250-year-old land claim extinguished by the swing of his gavel, and to see roads dug up and highways shut down and railways shut down and roads shut down and massive police pressure, and I just it it struck me as quite the thing for this judge to be able to have that power, to be able to make that happen. And I wondered what he thought when he woke up this morning watching the news, seeing heavy equipment rolling down the highway.
Well, and this doesn't stop with with defending a parcel of land. This, when we talk about the systemic nature of the racism that gets involved in the police and the Justice Department and law enforcement and all of that stuff, this is why we have missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's because they could view us as something that is less than them. And, so all of this stuff is related. And again, you talk about this hundreds of years of hurt. And, and at some point, we say no more, so and that's what you guys are doing. And that's why I believe you're going to continue to generate such support for the position you guys are taking. And, and again, these judges and these politicians and these law enforcement, personnel, they've got to live with themselves on this stuff. I may worry about my children, but I don't have to worry about my conscience. And that's what I hope. And I know that's kind of what you were just talking about. I hope these guys, have some tormented nights as their conscience comes back to haunt them for some of the things that they are promoting.
Absolutely. You know what? I struggle to believe that every one of these cops is, the enemy. Like it's not within me to feel that kind of hate for somebody. And so I'm, regardless of, what we've been through as a community here and all that, I've got no hate for anybody, but I wish for understanding, and I wish for education for these people. And I wish that they would understand that there's nothing that they can do. There's nothing. There's no gun big enough to make me go home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Skyler, again, I want to thank you so much for giving me so much of your time. And like I said, we will post up whatever information. You and I will stay in touch as things move. We don't know what each day holds in this thing, but you guys are not that far from where I live here in Cattaraugus, and I know a lot of people go back and forth, and we support what you're doing, and again, my thoughts go to every one of you that are there, and to all of your children. So stay safe as you can, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks again.
I hope when I make that call out that the cops are at the door again. That yourself and people like you will answer that call, because this isn't over by any stretch of the imagination here.
That's the truth. All right, Skyler Williams from 1492 Landback Lane in Six Nations, my guest, and I'm so grateful to his time. Thank you. Thanks for the time. That's it for the show. This is a special broadcast of Let's Talk Native, a Friday night broadcast. Be sure to share this program and help spread the word. Nyaweh.